Hey everyone, it's Fox from modelmaking.guru here. Welcome to part 8 of our Colonial Viper build. Righty tighty, here's part 8. We're going to get on in just a minute. I just wanted to quickly cover something that I meant to mention last time and didn't. You'll see there are 3 models before me. There is something that connects all these, and it's something I meant to talk about last time and totally forgot. And it relates to when you're painting using white. The thing that connects these 3 models, X-Wing, Snowspeeder and Y-Wing, is not that they're all Star Wars models, not that they're all excellent fine molds kits. It's actually that they're all the same colour, they're all white, but they look very different. This is because of 2 things: what's under the paint, under the white paint, and what's on top of the white paint. Whites are quite a tricky colour. If you're spray painting your model and you're painting it white, you may find it takes quite a lot of effort to actually get it to look. If you want a model that looks just white, it's going to take a few coats to get it white. White is very sensitive and picks up and displays very easily the paint underneath it and what's on top of it. The Snowspeeder and the X-Wing both have a coat of Humbrol Sea Grey underneath because I did paint chipping. You can't really see it on any of these, but there is paint chipping on all over the Snowspeeder. Using the same method that I used on the Viper. Because there's a sort of bluey grey underneath this layer of white, the white comes out slightly dull, like a very light grey. And then on top of that, what I've added on both these kits is a mixture of smoke washes, Tamiya smoke, and weathering with oil paints, MiG 502 Abteilung, Starship Filth and engine grease. These don't look quite the same because this has a lot more smoke wash and a lot more Starship Filth dry brushed onto it. But you can see they're not white, they're kind of a grimy grey. And I like to think it's kind of close to the ILM colours. I think they used, it was a flow quill colour and I can't remember exactly what colour it was, but it wasn't white, the ships weren't white basically. The Y-Wing was originally painted white, believe it or not. However, underneath the white on this was a spray coat of black, which makes it quite a dark grey colour when you spray the white on. I could have sprayed lots more coats, but it would have just come out white, and the Y-Wings aren't white. So I did a reasonably light, medium-ish coat of white on top of the black, which gave it a kind of like darky grey colour, medium grey. And then lots and lots of smoke and lots of Starship Filth and other oil colours as well, some engine grease, there's some of the rust colours, the 502 Abteilung rust colours. And the difference is basically this comes out like a warmer tone of light grey, a warmer grey rather than a white. But essentially all these 3 ships are the same colour, they're all just white. And I meant to cover this last time, when you're painting a white ship like the Viper, be conscious of what you're putting underneath it and what you intend to put on top. My Viper's going to be quite grubby, so I didn't want it pristine white, but because I painted sea grey underneath, I would have had to put quite a lot of white on to make sure it came out white if I wanted it that way. So I just wanted to quickly show you that. When you're spraying a paint, pay attention to what colour you're putting underneath. One thing I did find, I can't really show you underneath this X-Wing, but there's a section where there's a red square on the white paint, and there's a red square on top of a dark grey square. And you can tell the difference. The red square on top of the white is really bright. The red square painted on top of the grey paint, which is the same colour red, was much more muted and dark. So you can use that to your advantage when you're painting. So always think about what you're putting underneath and what you're putting on top. Right, but let's get rid of these lot and we'll crack on with the build. Okay, here's the plan. What we're going to do first is start preparing the cockpit for painting. Now this is my absolute bugbear. I hate clear canopies. I hate them because 2 reasons. One, the modeller's real challenge is to get the canopy frame nice and straight, which is easier said than done. You want nice straight edges. And also just the risk of putting little scratches, marks, marring on the canopy is so high that you can take great care with the canopy and screw it up and your kit's kind of ruined. So I hate doing these things, but hey, the more you do it, the more you learn. I don't know if you'll be able to see any of this because it is a clear piece. I'll just show you the canopy, hang on. Does it focus? It's basically the clear canopy with the frame moulded on, as standard for pretty much most aircraft kits. There are some kits you can get for some subjects, like Fine Moulds tend to do some of their kits with canopy frames and a clear piece as well in case you want to do glass. Some filming miniatures, sci-fi filming miniatures, had canopy frames but no glass in them because the lighting would cause unnatural reflections on the glass, and the glass would reflect the blue screen behind it. So rather cunningly, Fine Moulds decided to give you the option of either empty frames or this kind of canopy. Doesn't really apply to the Viper though, because the Viper was always a CGI model, so there was never a filming miniature. So I mean, you could, if you wanted to, drill the clear plastic out, but I don't have the nerve for that, and I never have. I'll probably try it one day, but too much of a wuss. Right, so canopy basics. I've learned over time, always wear gloves, just to avoid putting any fingerprints on the canopy. You can easily remove them, but the minimum amount of effort you have to expend getting fingerprints off, the less risk there is of putting scratches and swirls in the clear plastic. Now I've taken this from the sprue, so I'm just going to very carefully sand off. There's only one part here, that's where it came from the sprue, so I'm going to very carefully sand this off. My little tray. Yeah, so always wear gloves, just to avoid contaminating the plastic, make your life easier. As with many modelling things, it's all about keeping your life as simple as possible. So I'm just very, very gently flattening this down. I'm not really putting any pressure on it at all. This edge is going to glue in, so if you can still see a bit, it doesn't really matter as long as it's smooth and flat. That's all that matters. Canopy basics number 2. At least I've found, these are my canopy basics. Make sure if you do need to clean the canopy with a cloth, don't use kitchen roll or toilet roll. That's just going to do two things. One, probably scratch it, and two, put lots of little particles on the canopy, which then if you touch them and drag them across the surface, they'll put scratches in that as well. So if you're into your detailing at all, I'd say treat it like a car with soft Japanese paint. Minimum contact. So that's that file down. So I'm just going to use a finer grade now just to smooth it off a bit. Same as before, same as all of the sanding. And then very fine grade just to smooth it completely. Now there is some schmutz left on the canopy. For rubbing canopies and dusting them, what I have is a very soft, fluffy microfiber cloth. This is actually a Dodo Juice detailing buffing cloth, but they're really good. They're good for detailing, so they're even better for anything that requires a soft, fluffy cloth. I love these things. Now I'm just going to very gently, with no pressure at all, just dust off that powder. Just make sure it's clear. Yep, cool beans. It's on the inside. Again, I'm not putting any pressure on the towel here at all. Sorry if you couldn't see that, because I don't want to push the towel into the surface. Because if there is any dust or particles on there, you're just going to drag them straight across the surface and put scratches in. A lot of the times when you put scratches in the canopy, it's not because you've scratched it, it's because you've dragged something along on the surface that you can't see. Right, so let's get this thing masked off. This is the next challenge, is masking it. I don't know if you can see it better on here. You can probably see it better there, can't you? If I had some black kitchen roll, that would be rather handy. I know what I've got. No, it's too... I was trying to think of something to put underneath so you can see it, but I haven't got anything that's dark. Okay, let's get on. Now you probably will see my head at some point here, so, and my space visor, so apologies. Just check my focus. Right, what we're going to do is try and mask this off. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this, but here's an easy way that more often than not tends to work okay. What you'll need is your Canopy, some masking tape, and a cocktail stick, and a very fine knife. Let's see if I can find mine. I think this is them. Don't use the knife you'd normally use for cutting things off sprues if you use a knife. Try and get a fresh blade. And try and get something very fine. That looks perfect. It's not my usual modelling knife, but I can use it for this. So, let's get on with the killing, shall we? Now the trick is you want to mask off the bits of the canopy that can be clear and leave the canopy frame. Some people will take little tiny pieces and line them all up against the edge and spend hours, and I've done it myself on my last Viper. Little tiny pieces and line them all up along the edge and then just fill in the bit with a big piece of tape. It does work, but it's got two drawbacks. One, it takes approximately all the time, and two, you end up with a piece of tape overlapping a piece of tape and a piece of tape overlapping that, and you just get this kind of step effect, so it doesn't give you a nice clean crisp edge. So what I can do hopefully here is something a lot easier. I've got some Tamiya 10mm tape and some Tamiya 18mm tape. I'm going to go straight in with the 18mm tape because it's big and fat. Now, as with any masking, this can either work perfectly or just go completely wrong. So we'll just see, shall we? So all I'm doing is I'm going to place the tape over the bit I want to mask in the middle, if I can actually coordinate my hands and eyesight. Nope, because I'm an idiot. Oh, it's going to be one of those days. Right, let's try again. I don't think the tape's actually wide enough. So let's get that on. Okay, push it down. It's not quite covering the edge. Frustrations. Okay, so theoretically, this is what you want to do. Again, I'm trying to be really careful not to start dragging the canopy around on the desktop or anything like that. And I'm also not really putting any pressure on the tape, again, because I don't know what's on the underside of the tape. There could be all kinds of little bits on there that I don't want to drag around. Right, that's going to be awkward, not be quite wide enough. Oh, how frustrating. Get it lined up, dear boy. Just checking underneath to see what I can see. Okay, that's near enough. Any little tiny gaps I can sort out with masking fluid. So, tape's on. I'm just going to push it in against the canopy very, very gently. Very gently. Just so I can see the canopy frame underneath the tape. Now this is where the cocktail stick comes in. What I want to do is basically push this tape right against the edge, and I'm not going to go like that. I'm not going to do it straight down because that may rip the tape, so I'm going to do it almost perpendicular or parallel, whichever the word is. It's B word probably. And I'm just going to, using the tip of the cocktail stick, just gently burr it along the edge there, just push it along. And that should push it flush against the canopy frame. As always, apologies if you can see my big noggin sticking in the picture. But my old man eyes need to be close to see this nonsense. Okay. So let's push that along. And you can, I don't know if you can see now, but I can see now the frame shape underneath the tape. And then one last thing I'll do is just with the tip of it this time, not very hard. I just want to break the surface of the tape a little tiny bit, just sort of break it back as it were. So I'm just very gently pushing against the tape. It's just to break the surface a little, not actually rip it or tear it, just like breaking the spine of a book. It just softens it a little bit for the knife. Work it into all the little corners. Okay, now the next bit is the hair raising bit. What I want to do, move that out of the way so you can see. I hope you can see all this. So what I've done is basically I've now got the canopy frame as a raised edge in the tape. You can see that. Okay, right, now this is this hairy, scary, squeaky bum time. If this all goes horribly wrong, it's been nice knowing you. It was a great kit as far as I got. Right, so take your blade, nice and sharp, and at a slight angle into the corner of the frame. Make sure your blade's tight for a start. It's always a good idea. That's a wibbly wobbly for a blade. Tell you what, I'll use my normal knife. As I said, I think in a previous video, I've got two knives. Scruffy one, which is used for cutting nonsense, and a not so scruffy one, which is not used much. So, very carefully and very gently, and if you can have a steady hand, it helps. I'm just going to very gently, I'm not pushing down, run it along the edge of the canopy frame. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear little crunching noises. That's just the fabric, the fibre breaking. Go very slowly, take your time, and just break through. Now I'm not pushing down on this at all. I'm literally, well, a little bit of pressure, but not much. I'm not pushing down. I don't want to scratch the plastic underneath. I just want to break the paper. Same on the next one. This is a bit more tricky because it's slightly curved. But always go at about a 45-degree angle to the frame if you can. Just guarantees that your blade will stay seated in the little 90-degree corner and not at some other funky angle. Next one. This is more tricky because it doesn't go all the way to the end. I hope you can hear the little crunching noises. Let's just try from that angle. Oh God, look at my shaky hand. Old man hands. And last but not least, the top bit. If you can tilt the, sometimes it's handy to tilt the canopy so you can actually see where the edge is. Okay, I think we're done. Now the trick is if this has worked, ta-da, Paul Daniels moment. If this has worked, we should have that piece of canopy nicely masked. That's not bad at all, actually. Now you can get, if you're really not sure about doing this, you can in most places buy, or for most kits, buy masking sets. I'm pretty sure remodels have a load for actual planes, like military planes and so on, World War II planes. I know they have lots of Edouard brass etching sets. I think they have canopy masks as well. If you don't, sorry guys. For fantasy vehicles like this, if E-models don't have them, there is a company called, and I'm going to do this from memory, so if I get it wrong, I'll post a little link on the page. I'll post it kind of here. What it is. It's a company called, I think, Graphic Encounters. It's a really nice guy. It's over in the States, and he makes canopy masks for various different things like fire molds, X-wings and fighters and things, and they're usually vinyl stick-on ones. They're basically just this panel that you stick on. But if you want to have a go, this is quite good. Try on a test canopy first if you've never done this before. Use an old scrap kit you're not going to use. I'll just give you a look at that. Now when it works, it's an absolute dream and you're like, woohoo, I am god of the maskings. It doesn't always work. This is a nice square canopy, so I've kind of got an easy job compared to most. But I will be honest with you, when you get things like curved canopies, it can get a bit more fiddly. I'm just going to burnish it back into the gap here, just to push it in to make sure it's not come up while I've pulled the tape off. I'm also looking from the other side to see if there are any obvious gaps. Sometimes it can look like there's a big gap. I'm going to hold it up to the light. Sometimes it can look like there's a big gap, but it somehow works. So let's try another one. I'll do a couple on camera and then I'll go off and do the rest on my own time. Now for this one, I'm going to trim this. No, it's going to have rubbish on it now. If you can, try not to put your tape on the table first, because then you're just going to get nonsense off the table onto your tape. Also try not to drop the canopy. Make sure it's, hello, make sure it's dust free as well before you put the tape on. Again, just because you don't want to be dragging particles along the surface and introducing scratches. Okay, is it going to be wide enough? No, of course it's not. Trick is now to not take off the piece of tape I've already put on. Okay, so that go on there. Let's push it in nice and firm. Hope it doesn't stick too much to the other piece. Push it against the edge with my fingernail, which is really hard because these gloves are a really strange fit. My hands look a bit weird and watery, by the way. It's because it's approximately 10 million degrees today. I'm sweating like a birch, and not that you need to know that really, I suppose. It's not very pleasant, but it's just really hot and sweaty, so let's just leave it at that. So my hands are a bit sweaty. Okay, just push this in against the edges. If you've got a curved canopy part, then that can get a bit fiddly. Recently did the Revell Easy Kit of Anakin's Jedi Starfighter, and that had a curvy-wurvy canopy, and that was a right pain to mask off. Just because with a straight edge you just drag the knife along, with a curve it ain't that easy. So it might take you a couple of goes with the curve. By curved I don't mean like curved like that, I mean like it's a circle shape, or it's not a square, or it's not got nice sharp lines that are all straight all the way. You know what I mean. It's not so bad if it's like curved like a fighter plane cockpit like that, where you're still a straight line but you're going around the cockpit, that's fine. It's when you've got a cockpit frame line that goes like that round a corner, it's like, ugh. Or if you've got a really small canopy with lots of tiny little panels, that can get a bit fiddly. Okay, let's give this a try. Wish me luck. Send me flowers. gone over to the canopy there, that's not good. Onto the canopy frame even. Again, I'm not pressing down, really. Just trying to go into the bit I've just cut into the frame shape now. So that, for example, like there where my knife went off onto the canopy frame, it's not going to gouge into the canopy frame and cause scratches. Because it will, your knife will wander off to the side sometimes. Okay. Usually 3 is good enough. Doesn't help that I'm being so careful with the canopy to keep it clean. Just an extra level of stress. I say you can if you want to. There's no harm in cutting a strip of tape into tiny little squares and just placing them all along the edge. You do have to overlap them, otherwise you get little tiny gaps in the lattice pattern on your canopy. But like I say, it's fiddly, it takes a long time. It does work, it's just fiddly, and you do end up sometimes with a step structure on the edges of the canopy frame. With this method you do risk, of course, putting a scratch along the inside of the canopy frame, but hopefully that won't be visible. Let's give this a try. Booyah! Kasha! Check out my canopy. That doesn't rhyme. So I'll just run that in there. It's not perfect there. But what I can do, if there are any areas where it misses or you get a little chunk taken out, or if I get any even, what I'll do is I'll just put some liquid mask on it, maybe have a bit of the canopy frame, and then when I've taken all the tape off I can always very carefully touch that up with a brush. If you do get any paint on the canopy, don't worry too much. Your little tiny dot of paint, there are ways to get it off. So if I do get any I'll show you. Hopefully I won't have to show you that. Oh god, hopefully I won't. Right, so that's those two. As you can see, it is a slow process. It's very tedious. When it works, it's just the best feeling in the world. But the thing is, of course, you don't know if it's worked till you take these off once it's been painted. And once it's been painted, of course, if you have messed it up, it can get quite depressing, because you've suddenly got a model kit with a canopy that you can't use, which is not great. Oh, as an aside, by the way, I was about to say you could always get another one from the manufacturer. My tailplane from Revell arrived yesterday, a couple of weeks after the one arrived from eModels. So thanks to the guys at Revell, but even more thanks to the guys at eModels for getting one to me quicker. Right, so I'll go off and do the rest of this, and then we'll crack on. So, back in a moment. Okay, I've now masked off the canopy. Let's have a look and see. See there, I've got some nice straight edges. On this side, I didn't think the fat tape was wide enough for the whole thing, so I had to use 2 pieces, one there and one there. On this side, though, I discovered it was fat enough, because I'm an idiot. So I'll just use 1 piece there. We'll just see. You'll have a slight step now between these 2 pieces of tape, so we'll, sorry you couldn't see it, so we'll see if that makes any difference. It shouldn't make any difference at all, to be honest. That's all done. So there's just one last bit of masking to do now before I go and spray it, and that is, just check focus. I'm obsessed with focus, aren't I? That is to mask the underside and mount it on something suitable, as in this old coaster. We've got loads of these and these are great. That's what I use for my my glue holder. So what I'm going to do is basically mount it on here, spray it, but I'm going to mask underneath so that paint can't get inside on the inside of the canopy, which is quite straightforward. So what I need to do first is just very again as before, very lightly just dust it. Make sure there's no nonsense on the inside. Modelers, we hate nonsense. Unless it's happy accident nonsense that ends up looking awesome. Okay, which is usually how weathering works. Make it up as you go along and something good will come out. Right, so that's that done. So let's get this done. I was just watching back the last video and realised that all my videos tend to be like over here somewhere, so there's this whole area of screen that's never used. I should probably try putting... I've got a tripod now rather than a load of cake tins that the camera was on before, so I should really try lifting it all up so you can get a proper downward view. Right, so I need to mask this. So, as before, always, if you can at fingertips, with gloves. You don't have to be too precious about this. Oh, one thing I forgot to say, when you're taking tape off for masking the canopy, if you've got a tape dispenser like this, like the Tamiya ones, I call them Gundam feet because they're kind of like the feet of a Gundam. It makes sense in my head. When you store them, you put the tape like that so it doesn't get sticky. But when you're pulling off tape, or for anything really, but when you're pulling off especially for canopies, take that first bit and just discard it. And then get it stuck on your thumb. Hang on. Get off. Thank you. Just discard that because that will have picked up dust from the air. So always throw that first bit away. So this we don't have to be too careful with. This is really just to protect the inside from any stray paint. Don't need to be too precious. Yeah, you know, right, I've had enough of those gloves. They're coming off. Towel, dry my hand. As modellers, we have very strict, very limited patience sometimes. Spend all our patience on our models, have no patience for anything else. Right, so, it's much better. Everything that needs to be covered up is covered up now anyway, so I can take those off. Right, so let's get this stuck down. I'm just basically trying to make sure there's no little gaps that the paint can squeeze under. Let's get that on there. I often forget sometimes to actually point the thing that I'm doing at the camera. I do love you, dear viewers, but sometimes I do forget you're there. I think we're just about done. La la! That is now ready to be taken into the spray booth and sprayed. Tips and tricks for you when you're doing canopies. Excuse me. It is a clear piece, so obviously the first coat that goes on has to be whatever colour you want to be seen inside. When you're in any kind of aircraft, obviously the inside of the canopy frame is painted as well. So if I wanted this, say, to be, I don't know, bright pink or something on the outside, but I wanted it to be grey on the inside, I'd have to spray the grey first, and then the pink for the outside. Whatever the first coat is what you will see if you look through the canopy inside. So if your primer's white, but you want to do a black canopy, you probably don't want white inside. So if you haven't got a relevant colour primer, you just have to skip the primer stage. Sounds really weird, but if you haven't got a primer that you can use, then just skip that stage altogether. Just go straight to the paint. It won't be the end of the world. This is going to be kind of a metallic colour, so I'll probably use some Tamiya flat aluminium, and I may put into it some, not dark green, some RLM grey, just to tone it down. I don't want it to be shiny silver. If you look at the studio set piece, it's kind of a greyish metal colour. So I'm going to mix the bit of those together. For the inside, I think I'll just have it the same colour. Because it kind of looks like bare metal, so it'd be a bit weird for them to paint the inside but not have the outside painted. So I'll just keep it the same colour. It should look absolutely fine. Or should I? See, you're making decisions on the fly. You're getting to see my decisive decision-making process. No, actually, what I'll do, I'll use some good old Humbrol sea grey. I've done the cockpit itself is kind of a grey colour anyway, so I'll do that first, and then I'll put these on. This is a rattle can, so I'll go and spray this outside, and when we come back, I'll quickly do these coats, and then that should do it for today, because this video's gone on for far too long already. So, we'll go to the spray booth in a moment. Okay, right, as you can see, the canopy's now been painted sea grey, just a quick blast from the spray can. That's just to give the sea grey colour inside. So what we need to do now is crack on with the spraying. In the spray gun, I have mixed some Tamiya XF16 flat aluminium and Tamiya XF22 RLM grey. Kind of twiddled around with the mix a little bit because it didn't want it to look too silver, but I didn't want it to look too grey either. So let's get this done. Shouldn't take a moment. Activate this. Ooh, if I can find the switch. Turn on the compressor. More noise. Just do a quick test blast through to make sure it's coming through. There we go. Let's see what this comes out like. Notice I'm not spraying from the back. That would be incredibly silly. I don't want paint to go underneath or around the back, so I'm trying to spray against the side of the tape rather than up into the crack between the tape and the, well, where the tape isn't. I think this may just come out grey, to be honest. Let's find out. Give it a nice coat so you get some metallic sheen. It's probably more than I need, but I found that the metallic paint kind of suspends in the other paint, so I want to make sure I get as much of the metallic paint as I can. And that should do. Right, let's go and see how we did. And we're back. Right, that's all had time to dry. Not come out bad colour. It's kind of metallic-y sheeny, so it works for me. Probably not quite dark enough, but I can live with it. So at this point, that I have a little tradition, which is to shout, "Vorsichtgranate!" Because when you take this stuff off, it's a bit like throwing a grenade into a crowded room. It's either going to go right, and you're going to be really happy, or it's going to go horribly wrong. And you could write your kit off. Let's have a look at that and give you a close-up shot. So you can see it's kind of got a slight metallic sheen to it, which is not quite as much as I wanted, but it works. And it's quite neatly done. So, moment of truth. For this I will need a cocking tail stick, my ever so handy pair of little needle nose tweezers that tend to hide every 5 minutes and I have to spend 10 minutes finding them, and my sharp, not scruffy blade. Now this is where it gets quite nerve-wracking and sweat-inducing. I'm going to take the tape off. No, I'm not. I'm going to take this off the tape, off the board first. Get all this off. Right. I'm going to take off the interior tape in a moment. I'm just going to take the exterior stuff off first. I hate this bit. Double check my focus because I can't do this a second time. Now what you need to do is basically get your tweezers or whatever you're actually using in a little corner and just gently work it till it pulls off. Be as gentle as you can, because you don't want to scratch the canopy underneath. Just tiny little bit. I'm not pushing it into the canopy, and I only want a small bit of a foothold. Go to my cocking tail stick, just so I can get enough to pick up. There we go. Now with these, other way around, so I don't want to dig into the plastic. Just gently pull it off. When you're pulling tape off of masked area, don't just pull it off up, pull it back on itself. It helps reduce the amount of crud left on the glass, and do it slowly, and it also helps reduce any sort of crispy edges where the paint comes off from the paint. See that? I shoot with that hand. I got that wrong, didn't I? Never mind. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'll give you a close-up shot in a moment. This gets challenging when you've got lots of little tiny fiddly windows, like on a, I don't know, an X-Wing or a Junkers Ju-52, which is made of all the tiny windows. Never had to mask one of those off, thankfully, in small scale. I wouldn't like to do one in 1/72 scale, because that would be just brain sweat inducing. When you're painting a canopy like this, do give the paint full time to dry. With acrylics, at least an hour. Ideally, if you can, though, 24 hours. Just because you don't want the tape to come off and pull bits of paint with it and go all stringy and mushy, and you have to have patience. With canopies, it's all about being as patient as possible. If you need to leave something for an hour, leave it for 2. I left this for a couple of hours, so. Tiny little picking. I'm really trying not to scratch that corner, so I'm hardly putting any pressure on at all. If you use vinyl masking pieces, like I was saying earlier on, you can get kits where they have pieces that mask, designed to mask specific models. They can be a bit tougher to get off. They can be tougher to get on as well, but they can be quite tough to get off to get a corner to pull, so you really have to be super patient with those. And I've just realised I need to pull the bottom one off first, because that's the one that's on top. Let's find a corner. In fact, if I go from here, it's on top of the other tape, so it's a safe corner to go from. If you've got the choice of tape underneath, go for that corner. Corners are quite the nightmare, because you never quite know how it's going to work out. That's come out quite well, actually. For this one. So far, no major disasters. There's a little bit of paint missing on the canopy there, but I can either touch that in or live with it if I have to. One more. It's so nervous when I do this. It really is the only bit of modelling I actually hate. Well, see, I don't hate it, but I don't enjoy doing it. Figures as well. Flesh tone and painting faces. Not something I vastly enjoy. Now, weathered starships. Totally enjoy that. Right, that's looking pretty good. Let's get this tape off from inside. Slowly. Pull it back on itself to minimise any residue. I should do this piece by piece, really, but it's all quite uniform, so yeah. And there we have it. That looks pretty good. I'll give you a close-up shot. Unser focus. And there you have the finished cockpit. Now I'll let this dry overnight fully anyway, and then I'll give it a quick, very, very gentle buff with the cloth, just to keep it spanky clean. There's a few little bits I might need to touch in, tiny bits, but that's actually come out really, really well. I'm quite pleased with the colour as well. It's a muted sheen, which isn't bad at all. Now there's a couple of things you need to remember about canopies that I've found over the years are the best things to do. One thing I avoid doing, well, one thing I can't do with this, and I haven't done it, was apply a matte varnish before I'd taken the tape off, or done any weathering on it, because I needed it to be ever so slightly sheeny, so a matte varnish would kill that. But I've learnt over the years, while it's all masked off and you've painted it, the only real weathering you can do, apart from paint chipping, using liquid mask, is pastels or dry brushing. You can't use washes, or at least I've found I can't use washes, because there's a huge risk. If you use a wash, there's a huge risk, there you go, huge risk that the wash will go under the tape and completely screw up your clear part. I've learnt that the hard way over the years. So I used to like paint it all, then wash it and pastel it and everything else. So you can't do a wash. If you want to do any kind of shading on it, you'd have to either use pastels or airbrush. If you're using pastels, that's absolutely fine. But with pastels, you have to varnish afterwards. So remember that. If you're not going to be able to varnish it, don't put pastels on it, because they'll just come off if you touch it eventually and get on the canopy and risk scratching. So with this, I've not varnished it. I'm not going to. So there's no real weathering on that. But it's supposed to be like a metally clear metal, so that's not too bad. See how it's darker on the inside? See? Trust your Uncle Fox. So that's that done. So I'll let that dry and I'll give it a good buff. Right, that's going to do it for this time. Next time when we come back, I'll be cracking on with the decals. I'm not going to go for... I did say I'd paint the stripes on the ship, but what I'm actually going to do is use the decals. Primarily because I need to try the decals out and see what they're like anyway. The ones in the Mobius kit were terrible for stripes and I had to paint them. I want to see what the Revell decals are like. We'll see what else we can get done at the same time as well. As always, thank you very much for watching. Let me put my teeth in. Do stay tuned for the next episode. As always, go to www.modelmaking.guru. That's .guru. Ooh, that's not a letter. I'm talking rubbish. It's too hot today, and I don't know where I am. www.modelmaking.guru. Guru. It's better. My blog's on there. I post up all my works on the builds, galleries of all the stuff I've built. I also do commissions, and I'll have works for sale. So pop along, leave some comments, let me know what you think. I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/modelmakingguru, all one word, all lowercase. And of course on Twitter @modelmakingguru. You see the trend there. But yeah, get in touch, tell us what you think. Send us pictures of your work. Send me pictures of your work and I'll put it up on the Guru blog. Show it off to the world. But as always, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode, and until then, adios amoebas.